What's up, everybody? This is Gerald with Sweet Run. Welcome to episode 150. We are super excited to have Tony Reed on the show today. He is wildly accomplished at the marathon, half marathon, around the world. I mean, you talk about undercover overachiever. Well, we're going to uncover all of it and get into as much of it as we can. It's a great conversation, not only about his accolades, just in terms of volume, but also his focus on his health early in life, which is what got him into running in the first place. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
Oh, how are you?
Fine, and you?
Yeah.
Good. It's very nice to meet you.
So
Good to meet you too.
So you just a newbie at this running thing?
Yeah, I've only
admired the background there. I was like, whoa.
I know.
He's run a few.
That's impressive.
I just bought all those on eBay.
Okay. I got
you.
Just props for the podcast, right? When you're doing shows, yeah.
Yeah, there's a photo. There's a photo. I have to get this. So for many years, they were toys for my grandkids, and it's only literally as they got older and started running track and got their own medals, and I moved. I just went ahead and threw them up on the wall, but they were literally kept as toys.
Oh, I love it. For kids, they think of them as necklaces.
Yes. And there was nothing like watching my granddaughter walk around with about 10 of them hung around her neck.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my gosh.
So now, are they athletes as well now?
Yes. So they're out running track, cross country, playing basketball. And I have a grandson he's about, I guess, 18 months old now, and another one who's 6, so they're just getting started. So one of the things. How
many grandchildren do you have?
Oh gosh, let me count. It's about 8.
Put him on the spot.
Yeah, it's about 8.
Okay.
Yes. And so one of the things
awesome.
I make it a point of doing, especially with the young ones, is whenever I travel, I will buy postcards to send to them. And so for them, it's really cool, to get mail. And I bought them a box to put the postcards in, so that when I get to go by to see them, they're able to pull the box out. And we're able to go through the postcards and show them, all these different places that I've been, really to try to spark their interest in travel.
Yes.
Oh, that's important.
Oh, and that's what we love. That's why we really are passionate about what we're doing, because we get to talk about both.
That's right.
Running and travel.
So we should get into it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tony Reed, welcome to the Sweet Run podcast. We are so honored to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I was just listening to your podcast with Nathan Martin. And
okay.
Yeah, that was a really fun conversation. He's so talented.
Yes. Yeah, we reached out to him right after he became the fastest native-born African-American marathoner, because we had inducted the gentleman who was the fastest into the National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame. And so for us, it's interesting when we highlight a runner who has done something, that all of a sudden someone else will come along and they'll break that record, or and I think it's one of those things that people just weren't aware that we were keeping track of information like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is Nathan gonna get inducted into the National Black Marathoners Hall of Fame?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. We may get the individuals. Yeah, that's somewhat of a secret. The person who really ends up selecting a lot of our individuals is Gary Corbett. And so Gary Corbett has a list of people that's a mile long that he would love to see inducted into the Hall of Fame, who have done some really amazing things. Everyone from 800-meter runners all the way up to ultra marathoners. So it's a waiting list.
Yeah, so
Yes.
you all just are exclusive to the marathon, even though that's obviously the bulk of what you focus on is a distance. But yeah, that's great.
Well, we have never really just focused on marathons. What happened when we formed the organization in 2004, we were debating about what to call our organization, National Black Runners Association or National Black Marathoners Association. And we realized that the other co-founders, Charlotte and I, together, we had probably run a combined probably 80 marathons. And we wanted to be taken serious. We wanted to be taken seriously by the running community. So they wouldn't see us as just a fly-by-night organization or a group of individuals who aren't serious about the sport. So we said, okay, we'll call ourselves a National Black Marathoners Association. However, since day one, we've been open to everyone, regardless of their distance. Yeah, so that's the reason why marathoner is there in the name. But yeah, we've been open to
Okay.
people of all distances. I think it's 60% of our members have never run a marathon and never plan to. So, and most of our members actually end up running half marathons.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, that's definitely more of a doable distance.
yeah. You can absorb that a bit easier. Now, a little bit about your origin story. If my your research stands up, you were at a totally different type of conference, and you were speaking, and marathoning came up, and Charlotte looked at you. It was like a CPA convention or something like
Uh,
that, or it's something totally unrelated to marathon. Well, how did
yeah,
that you two
totally
spark
unrelated.
that connection?
So, my background is actually in information technology. I've always worked in IT my entire career. And the only reason I got a CPA was actually my second master's degree because I got tired of people assuming that even though I was an executive, I didn't understand finance and budgets. So I literally returned to
Mm.
college 10 years after I got my MBA, got a master's in accounting, and passed the CPA exam. And so I was one of those rare individuals that, as an adjunct professor, I could literally teach logical and physical database design one semester and advanced accounting the next semester. So it's just kind of that
Oh my.
flexible and fluid between the two. And so I was speaking at the National Black Data Processing Association conference in Chicago. And the topic I was speaking on happened to have been goal setting. So I had set a goal of completing 50 marathons before I turned 50 years old. And at that time, I had completed about 46 or 47 marathons. So, to put this in perspective, that was in 2001. And I've been running marathons since 1982. And I was usually one of maybe just a handful of blacks in a marathon. I ran a lot of marathons where I was the only black. And so I just kind of spent that time just running and really wasn't conscious of the fact that I had run that many marathons. So I just kind of thought, well, this is marathon number 38, 39, 40. And the only people who were keeping halfway track of it were my immediate family members. So I didn't think anything of having run 47 marathons. So I brought it up during my presentation when I talked about, setting long-term goals. Because I had a goal, like I said, doing 50 marathons before I turned 50, and another goal of doing 50 marathons in one state. With my logic being that by the time I would finish running those marathons in one state, my kids would be grown and out the house, and I could suddenly travel around the world and run marathons. So yeah, I brought that up.
I like that.
So I brought that up during the conference, and afterwards, Charlotte and a number of Black marathoners that were there kind of pulled me to the side and said, "We've never met anyone who's run as many marathons as you have." And I was like, "Well, oh, I didn't realize that. I've been just running a couple of marathons every year, and I just never really thought of it as being a really big deal." And so they says, "Well, when you get ready to run your 50th, let us know and we'll, come to Dallas or wherever, and we'll run it along with you." So I think it was about five or six showed up in Dallas. to run a marathon, and this is a marathon where for many years I was the only black. It was called the Dallas Trails Marathon, and all of us ended up either winning age group or weight division trophies. And so afterwards, we were talking. We said, it'd be kind of cool, if we can get a group of blacks together, every year at a different location around the country, just kind of get together and run and check out what's been going on with everyone. So over the next 2 or 3 years, Charlotte and I kind of stayed in touch. And, we were talking about, hey, this would be great, to pull this type of organization together. But it should be more than just about distance running. So in 2004, I was running the St. Louis Marathon, which is my hometown. I currently live in Dallas. I've lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area since 1978. But the St. Louis Marathon ran right by the projects that I lived in when I was growing up in St. Louis. So these are like the 12-story tall projects. It was a pretty bad neighborhood. But I was surprised when I ran by there. There were some black kids that were sitting on the curb. And they got up and they started running along with me. And it just hit me as evidently I must be a role model for these kids. So we're running along and we're talking. And I remember talking to Charlotte maybe a few weeks after the race, and I said, you know what? We need to give college scholarships to kids because we both grew up in, I wouldn't, well, you could say in poverty, or definitely did not grow up with a silver spoon in their mouth. And we understood the appreciation and the impact of having a good education. So with that, we organized the National Black Marathoners Association. And one of our primary goals is to give college scholarships. So we have given over $50,000 in college scholarships. And that's something that we would like to continue doing. And it wasn't until we formed the organization also, in hindsight, I realized that we actually started the black running boom in this country as soon as we started the organization. There were no other national black running organizations in the U.S. We ended up starting it, and as a result of us meeting up at different locations around the U.S., more and more blacks started kind of jumping on that bandwagon, and they started doing it. The founders, for example, of Black Girls Run and even Black Men Run used to be members of our organization. So they were formed several years after we were formed. And so the growth of African American distance runners can actually be traced back, if you were to use this in 6 degrees of separation, back to the various things that we were doing. So, for example, after years of having summits in the U.S., a number of runners, were coming to me saying, so you ran marathons on all 7 continents. I said, yeah. And they says, well, we would love to do something like that also, but we don't want to be the only black in the tour group. And as they were talking about it, I was thinking, yeah, for me, it would have been great if there would have been at least 3 others, because we would have played Bates or Spades or Bidwits or something on those long plane flights. And so we had our
100%.
first international. So we ended up having our first international summit at the Bermuda Marathon. Well, now it's Bermuda International Race Weekend. And ever since then, every other year, we would have an international summit someplace in addition to our U.S. summit. So we're able to trace the roots now of all these different groups that are meeting up, for example, at the Abbott World Majors in Boston and every place else, literally comes right back to us. We were the first ones to do it and kind of inspired and motivated others to go ahead and take off and do their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a number of nuggets for me. Number one, at least one of the older routes of the LA Marathon, the only marathon I've actually run, what ran through kind of near USC. And if you've been to LA, once you leave USC's campus, it can get rough really fast. And to see these people out on their porches and on the street on that Saturday or Sunday morning, whatever it is, cheering. Yeah, it must be a Sunday morning because you'd hear, you'd see people, and then there'd be a gospel choir and all this stuff as you're running through South Central or Central. South LA now. Okay, yeah, we don't call it South Central anymore. Apparently, they're trying to rebrand. But anyway, that was huge just to see those faces, people cheering for you that probably would never have run anything like that themselves, but they're cheering for you. And if I was always like, wow, if this inspires one more person to get off the couch and go, that's great, right? And
Yes.
definitely, I feel like you started this healthy version of the family reunion, right? You know, where you, it's like you way you were describing. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get together every other year. We're gonna meet up at a race, play some spades and bid whist, and you know, I was like, okay, yeah, this is like the healthy version of family reunion. I love it, man. That's wonderful, Tony.
Yes, and in fact, if my memory serves me correct, the race director of the LA Marathon was a gentleman named Terry Collier. He's an African American guy. And he
Hmm.
left LA. I think he did some work with the Las Vegas Marathon. He moved to Atlanta and he was the race director for the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive Marathon in 2000. Looking on my wall. Yeah, 2018. Yeah, so that may have been the reason why
Okay.
it went through. May have been the reason why it went through those neighborhoods.
Yes. I know it has changed. The course has changed so much now. I mean, so many times it's
Yeah.
changed and different finish lines, but definitely I liked it when it went through a lot of the ethnic neighborhoods and you could kind of see the real flavor of the city and not just one version of it. But Tony, oh my gosh. Okay, so you have run 100 marathons in all 50 states and 7 continents. We need to hear more. This is so inspiring, interesting. Like, what made you decide to go on that path?
Well, it actually goes back to when I was about 8 years old. And I was diagnosed as being pre-diabetic, and the doctor said I would go on insulin by the time I was a teenager. But
Mhm.
I went to a high school where it was mandatory that you participate in sports, and I ended up losing weight and didn't have to go on insulin for some reason. So bear in mind, we're talking about the early 1970s. And in college, I had to read a book by Dr. Kenneth Cooper called Aerobics and then another one called New Aerobics. And in New Aerobics, there was one paragraph in there where he stated diabetics who are dependent on insulin could either decrease their insulin intake or go completely off of it if they maintain a fitness program. So with that, I decided I was going to set a lifetime goal of averaging what I would call running, walking, or crawling 3 miles a day, or just kind of rounding things up about 100 miles a month. So that was a lifetime goal that I set in 1976. In 1979, I started keeping a handwritten running journals, which I still keep to this day. And so that has been my primary goal of running is to try to average those 3 miles a day. In fact, last year I was up at the Berlin Marathon and I logged mile number 50,000. And I had averaged exactly 3 miles a day. And I'm 68 years old and I'm still not on insulin. So it's literally kept me off of insulin for 60 years. Uh, Running marathons was a way of putting goals out there, kind of targets. So the two marathons that I always ran in Texas was the Dallas Marathon, which is in December, and the Fort Worth Cowtown Marathon, which is in January. Sorry, which is in February. So training for those two marathons, training for the December marathon meant for me starting on my birthday, July 2nd, I started training for that marathon. So that kept my weight down during the summer and going into Thanksgiving. Then I would run a Dallas marathon and then immediately start training for the February marathon. So that kept the weight off during the Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, and so that got me through all of that. So like I said, I was a sole support for a family of four. So those are literally the only two marathons I ran for almost 20 years. If I couldn't drive to the marathon and get back, like the next day, I just wasn't going to do it. So, and again, being a very long range planner, my goal was to just run those 2 marathons every other year until my kids got older. And as I say, with children, when they are young, they want your time and not your money. When you get old, or when they get old, they want your money and not your time. So with that, I felt that to uh, to run those 2 marathons for the 20 years would make it so that I would be healthy enough to pursue traveling to different marathons afterwards. So I had a business trip in Europe in 2004 and decided to just take advantage and run a marathon there. In 2005 was my 50th birthday, and I always wanted to run a marathon on my 50th birthday. This is something I had been just planning, for, and that was in 2005 since about 1985. So you're talking 20 years planning to run a marathon on my birthday. And in the beginning, there was, it would have been the San Francisco Marathon. They moved that from the first weekend in July, I think, to the last weekend in July. Leadville, Colorado, or Gold Coast, Australia. So I had to decide between Leadville or Gold Coast. So I hopped on a plane, went down to Gold Coast, and that was the second continent. And that was almost the last trip I ever took, last international trip. The plane flight was horrible. When I got down there, I was literally trying to figure out how I could get back to the U.S. without flying. Uh, but after yeah, it was a bad plane flight. Uh, and while I was down there, I actually had the race application for the 2007 Antarctica Marathon in my pocket because I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to run the 7 continents. And I had taken that race application with me, and then they held the race every other year in Antarctica. And I was just ready to just say, well, I'm not even going to pursue 7 continents. But the day after the race, I was on a tour of the rainforest. We got out the bus, walked to this small little bush, and the tour guide said, "This is the Antarctica tree." And it was like this, little light shine down on the tree. I had the application for the Antarctica Marathon in my pocket. And I says, okay, this must be a sign. I'm supposed to register for the Antarctica Marathon. So I registered for the Antarctica Marathon for 2007, and it kind of kept me busy. In 2006, I ran the Great Wall of China Marathon. So now that knocks out North America, Europe, Oceania, and now Asia. So while we are sailing to get down to Antarctica, the race director happened to mention, he goes, you're only the third Black in the world to run a marathon in Antarctica. And I said, oh. And I said, so have any Blacks finished marathons on all 7 continents? And he said, no. So right after we did the Antarctica Marathon, sailed back to Argentina and ran a marathon there, the Fin del Mundo Marathon, which meant I only needed one other marathon to go to knock out 7 continents, and I was able to do that in June in Kenya. And the process ended up becoming the first Black in the world to run marathons on all 7 continents. So that was in 2007.
Wow.
And at our summit that we had in Fort Worth in 2009, I ended up meeting a number of very interesting Black runners, a gentleman named Nathan Skipper. And Nathan was running marathons in all 50 states, but he had a goal of doing it in all 50 states and taking his children with him before they graduated from high school. So he wanted to expose all of them to everything going on in the country. Then I met Frederick Davis III, who has run maybe 300 or 400 marathons and ultras. He was also telling me about running 50 states. And then Angela Ivory, who I had seen at a number of different marathons around the country, she was also encouraging me to run marathons in all 50 states. With that in mind, I decided to go ahead and pursue that. And by the way, that 2009 race was also my 100th marathon. So, with their encouragement and support, I went ahead and knocked out the 50 states.
Wow.
That is incredible, Tony. I mean, just that whole, I was, hanging on the edge of your words and with the story and kind of like, how it all came together to run on the all 7 continents. And then on top of that, to run 100 marathons. So, what does your running look like these days?
Yeah.
You got any marathons coming up?
Well, we're actually having our summit in Oakland next weekend at the Oakland Marathon, half marathon, and I think it's 5K.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
just today, I went ahead and registered for the marathon. Uh, for me, it's going to be more like a long training run than anything else. I'm just looking to get there and finish it and have a good time.
Oh man, you
So,
just stay at a certain level of fitness. You keep a marathon in your back pocket so you can just pull it out whenever you need to, even as a long training run.
well, I had actually retired from running marathons in 2022, and I was at I happened to be in the finish line area of last year's New York City Marathon, and I'm sitting there in they had tents set up there at the finish line. And so I'm sitting there at a table in the tent, and there is Frank Shorter is at the table, and Joan Benoit is also there. And so we're all talking, and she was asking me about my running marathons, and she says, "Oh, you should never ever get out of shape for running a marathon." And I felt really bad because even though I had still been running, I had kind of been sandbagging because I didn't have any goals or anything like that in mind other than keeping my 3 miles a day average. And my times had gotten considerably slower. But after talking to her, I felt really bad. And says, "Well, okay, let me go ahead and start training for another marathon and go back to knocking out 2 or 3 marathons a year." So and it just so
So
happened
it's
Oakland Marathon was literally scheduled the same day I was going to be doing a long run in preparation for another marathon. So I says, "Well, I'll just go ahead and
okay. Okay.
knock it out."
You might as
Perfect.
well have fun. And there's a few episode links we can send you on the Bay Area if you don't have it all mapped out, which you probably do, because the theme that I'm getting here is if you want to be successful in life and you don't know which way to go, start with a marathon or at least distance running and work your way up because you took care of your diabetes, kept that off, manage your weight, your MBA, CPA. Wait, there was another degree on IT, and you found a national organization, run all over the world, and you seem to attract the same types of people around you. So clearly, the marathon is a key to success if you are going to be the standard bearer.
And I have a question. I would like to know, well, so you founded the National Black Marathoners Association in 2004. So 20
Yes.
years. Are you guys going to have a big celebration, or how are you going to commemorate this 20-year anniversary?
That's a good question. We really hadn't thought much about that. We're just right now we're looking at, getting everything through Oakland. Um, every now and then we'll do what's called a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, where we'll get together with our board members and we'll seriously start looking at this from a purely business perspective. Looking at what our goals are, looking at what's going on in the running community, and we will adopt and we'll make changes based off of what comes out of those particular meetings. Um, so, for example, we had a major change that occurred in 2012 and 2013 when Amby Burford, who was one of the senior editors of Runner's World, reached out to us. And he asked if a lady named Marilyn Bevins was in our database. And I looked up and she wasn't in our database. And he said, well, he was writing a book, which later came to be the First Ladies of Running. And so I started researching and, went on the internet and found her name and found out she placed second in the 1977 Boston Marathon. And the first thing I thought of was, why is he asking me about this lady? Because she is obviously white. She placed second at the 1977 Boston Marathon. And I keep digging and digging, and I finally found her in an interview, a television interview. And I was just totally blown out the water to find out she was an African American lady born and raised in Baltimore. So during one of the board meetings, I brought this up. And one of the board members said, "Oh, have you ever heard of a guy named Ted Corbett?" And I said, I remember reading about him, in some books. And they said, "Did you know he was black?" I said, "No way." So, so we started talking about the fact that we had been running all these years, and all of us did not know about this rich history of African American distance runners. So with that, we decided we were going to start the National Black Distance Running Hall of Fame. And of course, Ted and Marilyn were two of the first individuals that we inducted. And that led to a really, really good relationship that we have with Gary Corbett, who is now our official historian. So as a result of doing the Hall of Fame, and we also combine it with what we call our Achievements Award banquet, where we would recognize our members who have done, qualified for, and run at least 3 Boston marathons, 50 states, 7 continents, 100 marathons or half marathons, 100 ultras also. So we started recognizing our members who have done these things. And as we started doing that, other blacks were looking at this and going, "Oh, I never knew that goal existed. So maybe I'll go ahead and pursue that." We even realized that, to the best of our knowledge, there had been no blacks to run half marathons in all 50 states. So we started a little contest where we gave awards for running what we call a half and half award for running half marathons in half the states. And from there, it took off to see, well, who's going to be the first one to run half marathons in all 50 states. And now you'll talk to runners and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm doing halves in all 50 states, fulls in all 50 states." The 7 continents is like the predecessor to the Abbott World Majors of blacks getting out there now and doing more international events. And so yeah, the SWAT meetings are really, really interesting, and just kind of listening to things that our members will kind of bring to us. 2021, Marilyn Bevans was getting inducted into the RRCA National Distance Running Hall of Fame. And that was going to be one stop on my 4,000-mile road trip that year. And a friend of mine was with me. And, they saw Marilyn getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. And this person was not a runner. And they said, someone needs to do more to bring out this lady's history and her accomplishments and what have you. And they said, something like a documentary. And I looked at them and said, "Really?" And so for the rest of the road trip, I kind of started conceiving of a documentary that would focus on African American women distance runners. The next stop after I left Orlando for her Hall of Fame induction was in the Virginia Beach area, where I had lunch with Sika Henry, who became the first African American female professional triathlete, and with Lisa Davis. And Lisa later set the Guinness Book of Records for women running marathons on all 7 continents in 7 days, 27 minutes, and 30 seconds. At that time, neither of them had achieved those particular goals. But I was talking with them about the concept for the documentary, then drove on up to Baltimore, Maryland, where I had lunch with Elisa Harvey and with Marilyn Bevans, and talked with them about this idea. And Elisa Harvey, the year she turned 40, had run a mile in under 4.5 minutes. And she was also a sub-3-hour marathoner. So I talked with the two of them about it. And the rest of the trip went up to New York City, talked to folks up there, then to Boston, back around to Indianapolis, to St. Louis, and then came back to Dallas. And by the time I got to Dallas, I had a concept for what this documentary would look like. Gary Corbett had accumulated a list of African American women who had run marathons in under 3 hours. And the only reason he had accumulated that list was because of Shawana White. So Shawana White had reached out to Amby after his book came out, The First Ladies of Running. And she asked him if he knew of African American women who had run marathons in under 3 hours. So Amby turned it over to Gary and me, and I just kind of looked at Gary and said, "Hey, this is your area. And so he started creating this list, and it became known as the list of African American women who had broken 3 hours. And as I looked at the list, there were only about 20 women on the list. I knew 9 of them. And I reached out to them and said, would you like to be in this documentary? So with that, we ended up with the documentary, Breaking 3 Hours, Trailblazing African American Women Marathoners. And that was an amazing experience. Uh, the, I wish that I had had a camera available, a video camera, the first time these ladies sat down at the dinner table together and just to record their back and forth conversations. Because you're looking at different generations, some who ran track, some who didn't run track, pre-Title IX. I mean, the conversation was just off the charts. And all I could do was just sit there and listen. So that was, it was amazing. Yes, I'm always the slowest person at the table.
I mean, that's that is such a legacy, and I think it's really important to have that documentary out there and just to show people, and people are talking about the list, and at first no one knew about it, and now I feel like it definitely comes up in conversations at times, and so it's good. I think it encourages women, and it'll encourage more Black women to enter into the sport of distance running. So I think it's a really important piece of our history, and it's something that we can just keep going. I do have a question. Do you know who is the oldest Black woman to break 3 hours in the marathon?
That would be Ingrid Walters. And sorry, I'm looking at the post. I'm going to cheat. She broke 3 hours for the first time when she was 43 years old.
Okay.
So that's the oldest that we know of who broke it for the first time. We love Ingrid.
She's awesome.
So one of my favorite sayings is that if we don't tell our stories, then who will? Little interesting 100%. Things.
Yes.
So when we inducted Ted Corbett into the Hall of Fame in 2013, even though he was like one of the founders of the New York Roadrunners, was one of the presidents, and did all these great things with the New York Roadrunners, he had never been inducted into their Hall of Fame. Until we announced that we were inducting him in ours, and a few months later, they decided to induct him in their Hall of Fame. A number of individuals that we've inducted into our Hall of Fame have kind of revisited us afterwards, and they said, you know what? My career was overlooked by all these other organizations, and after you guys inducted me, it's like I suddenly got recognized by these other organizations. So for me, it's really, really important that we tell our stories. And even now, over the last couple of years, the big one that has come out is that it is Ted Corbett is the one who conceived of having a 5-borough New York City marathon. Because it was originally multiple loops run in Central Park, but he's the one who conceived of this idea, and credit had actually been given to someone else. So it's important for us to get these stories out there and to correct the history. So
that's vital, because I think it's either in the running community, a lot of these facts and monumental moments, I think one of two things happens. Either it's just not talked about, overlooked, or just because people don't know, or you get people outside, a lot of African Americans like, what are you doing running? How far are you running? Oh my gosh. Well, that's just to be blunt, that's not where we play, right? We're on the track. We're, and it's like, no, you just don't know your history. Not your fault, but thanks to, organizations like yours, it's out there, and more of it's being dug up and shared. And so, you're doing so much on so many facets of just running culture and life in general,
Yeah.
The history part we find is really critical. At the starting line of my first marathon, the white runners around me were telling me that I was in the wrong race. I should stick to shorter distances. But growing up, I was a student of Black history. And like I said, I'm from St. Louis, and I happen to have known that Dick Gregory, the activist, was a distance runner. He was an All-American in cross country and track. And I also happen to know in 1976 he ran from LA to New York and averaged about 48 miles a day. So with him as one of my role models, I said to myself, if Dick Gregory couldn't do 48 miles a day for 71 days, what's 26.2 miles in one day? My other role model was Benjamin Coleman. Benjamin Coleman is my great great grandfather. And he was born in 1840. So he spent the first 25 years of his life as a slave down at the Windsor Plantation in Port Gibson, Mississippi. And I kept kind of envisioning him wanting to run away. But the slave master and overseer were telling him, you can't run past that fence post. You know, we just don't want to see you running. So they wanted to put him in a box. And the question is, did he really want to stay in that box? And so I'm very sensitive when people try to tell me what I can't do and they want to put me in their box of low expectations. And to me, the same thing even applies to blacks in swimming. When, people will say, well, black people don't swim. Well, I call that kind of the slave mentality of limiting yourself. Because you figure out that if you were a slave back then, and you knew that you could run long distances and you could swim across that river, you could swim across the pond, you could run. And so for me, running represents a true sense of freedom. And having had knowledge of history is a thing that has made me, I would say, kind of successful in multiple areas. Even when I was at the Seattle Film Festival, Far Breaking 3 Hours, a documentary, one of the guys, after we were talking to me, said, well, you really need to be in a documentary yourself. And so we came out with a second documentary called, got to look at it. It's called We Are Distance Runners, Untold Stories of African American Athletes. And it gets into the lives of people like Dick Gregory. I had the pleasure of interviewing him in 2016, a few months before he passed away. And we were just talking about his days as a distance runner. And a lot of people didn't realize that his social activism got started as a result of distance running. So when he was a junior at Sumner High School, he set the national high school record for the 1 mile. But the state of Missouri refused to recognize it because it was run at a segregated track meet. So that September, he led a walkout of all the black high schools in St. Louis and enforced the integration of high school sports in the state of Missouri. And that's all because they refused to recognize Dick Gregory's 1 mile record. So his social activism literally got started as a result of distance running. And he just kind of took it all from there. So it's this documentary we share.
Oh my
We got to
goodness.
schedule a second one just for the masterclass on, African American distance running. That's a whole nother episode.
This is incredible. I'm like sitting here learning so much from you, Tony. Thank you for just, sharing with us, sharing with everyone that's going to be listening to this. If someone wants to join the Black Marathoners Association, tell us how can they do that?
Okay, well, first of all, it's free. They just need to go to blackmarathoners.org. We have a registration button right there. They can just click on it and they can end up being a member. So it's just that easy. We also have a Facebook group that has 16,000 members in our Facebook group. And it's, it's free to join. We would love to have people again donate to our scholarship fund. So that, again, we can continue supporting and sending black high school distance runners to college. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Wow, so much good, so many good things. Okay, well, on our show, we like to talk about travel, and you love travel.
Yes.
So this is right up your alley, Tony. So you live in Dallas, Texas. We would like to know, if we come to Dallas, one, we want to go on a run with you. Where would you take us on a run in Dallas?
To White Rock Lake. White Rock Lake is kind of in the it's almost kind of near the center of Dallas. It's a 9 mile loop around the lake. It is gorgeous. It's beautiful. I live actually a half mile away, so I will wake up and put my shoes on and just go straight to the lake to run. So I
Okay.
love
Nice.
running
Okay.
all 4 seasons. You get to see when the birds migrate there in the winter time, and in the spring you get to see the little ducklings, following their mother ducks around. So it's just a great place to run.
That's
Sounds
great.
beautiful.
Where do you like to dine out? What are your favorite restaurants or places to dine out in Dallas?
Some people are foodies. I'm just not a foodie. I mean, I couldn't tell you the difference
Okay.
between a Coke and Pepsi. My taste buds are just shot. So,
Got it. How about your favorite race in town
oh,
of
that's
any
easy.
distance?
Oh, that would be the Dallas Marathon. So yeah, so that's one of the ones I've done that one over 20 times. I love it. It loops around the White Rock Lake. So it's on that one miles. What is it? About 8 through 11 or 12. It's like as flat as a pancake, and it's a
Okay.
great marathon. And I also happen to have been on their board of directors. So I guess they saw me running around the lake
Very
so many
nice.
times. Someone actually stopped and asked me, what I was doing.
Come on.
They're like, get
It
this
wasn't
man
that
on the board here.
it it wasn't that many of us out there running, and so yeah, that's I was literally stopped while I was running around the lake and got to talking with the person. And they said, "Look, I'd like to nominate you to be on their board of directors." So I'd like to say I'm probably one of the
Oh,
few
Oh,
that's
that's great.
awesome.
individuals who has looked at running from the perspective of being a runner, being on the board of directors of a major race. We just had over 30,000 runners at this year's race, and was also on the board of directors for Running USA, which was more of a running industry type of an
Hmm.
organization. So being on their board of directors and looking at things from that level, from the business side of the running community. So
Got it. Okay. And how about your favorite running store where you get all your gear? So if we needed something while we were there,
um,
Amazon, right? He orders it all.
Or he orders it online, maybe.
oh gosh, I would say Luke's Locker. Luke's Locker here in Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah, they have several stores in Dallas, and one of them is close to SMU, Southern Methodist University. So that's where I also go to
Okay.
buy things. But yeah, I'm primarily an online shop.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's easy. It goes right
Yeah.
to your doorstep. You don't have to do anything.
Well, I actually have alerts out on the
Indeed.
things that I'm interested in buying. So when I see the price drops, that's when I go and purchase them. So I'm notorious for
Got
never
it.
having paid more than $100 for a pair of running shoes from just catching everything
Really?
on
Oh,
sale
that
during the
is
off season.
good.
See, I just kind of find out
So,
when they start changing models, and I did just get last year's model at almost 40% off.
Yeah,
And I take the
that's
okay.
savings
smart.
and use it. I use the savings to travel.
I would say pay for the next marathon and the next trip.
There you
Absolutely.
go.
Very
Um,
smart.
now, do you have a must see in Dallas if you're visiting? Like, don't leave Dallas without doing or seeing X.
The African American Museum in Fair Park. You have to go by this. Go by
Okay.
there to support them and see their exhibits. There's another area in Dallas called Bishop Arts District where they have a lot of restaurants also for people who are into foods. And again, that is kind of in the African American community.
No, that's fantastic. Those are definitely, I would definitely love to
Yeah.
check that out for sure. Now, Tony, I know I think I might know what you will say, but I'm going to put it out there. Do you have any hotel recommendations for people that are coming to visit Dallas?
When I travel, I usually stick with some of the Hilton properties, like Hampton Inns, for example, but no particular hotel here in the Dallas area.
Well,
So
I'm
if you're
sure there's plenty to
Oh,
choose from.
yeah.
Plenty to choose from.
Yeah. We're always thinking about the one that's closest to the running trail, or a
Yes.
path or something. But, or that may be unique to the area, but that's good.
okay. Well, if you had asked me that question about 20 years ago, I would have been forced to say Motel 6 because I was their vice president of IT.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's really cool. I love it. Oh, Tony Reed, this has really been such an honor
Yeah.
and a pleasure to have you on the show. We have learned so much. I know all of our friends listening will
Mm-hmm.
have appreciate all the knowledge that you have and how you are really advancing African American distance running in America and in the world. Thank you for everything that you're doing for our sport, and we're just excited to see where it goes, and all the women that are going to do amazing things, and men, and where the National Black Marathoners Association is going to go. Congratulations on 20 years, and thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for spending some time to chat with us.
Yeah,
You're
and before we
welcome.
let you go, we always like to ask, which may be a challenge for you because you've been so many places. If you could run anywhere in the world for any reason, where would it be and why?
Are we talking about a particular race or just to go for a run?
Any reason,
No, it doesn't have to
anywhere.
be a race, just anywhere
Oh,
you'd like to
okay.
run.
That would be along the river in Paris. Um, I love going to Paris. Uh, and every time I'm there, I always literally go on the run there along the riverside. If you were going to ask me for my favorite marathon, I was going to say the French Riviera Marathon, which runs from Nice to Cannes, which is gorgeous. A lot of people run the Paris Marathon. Got to do the French Riviera Marathon. You have beautiful French villas on the left, the Mediterranean on your right with all the huge yachts and everything, and it's just gorgeous. So yes.
Ooh, that sounds
Yeah, I'll
beautiful.
take either one of those.
Yeah. Are you going to the Paris Olympics this summer?
You mean Paris, Texas Olympics or sorry, Paris, Texas is about 100 miles away from Dallas, so that's a bad joke.
Right.
Uh, uh, no, I won't be going there, unfortunately. Unlike Nathan, I didn't even make it to the Olympic trials, marathon trials, so no, I'm not going to be headed there. But I will be watching.
Yeah. I thought I'd ask because you're such a world traveler. I could see you going and being the ultimate spectator, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
got the joke. I spent some time in Texas as a kid, off and on, just for visiting family. So I was like, Paris, Texas, of course. Got to
Yeah.
throw that one in there.
Yes.
Well,
Uh,
Tony, tell everyone where they can find you to not only follow along with everything that you're doing personally with your running, but everything to do with Black distance running and the National Marathoners Association.
the
Black
best way
Marathoners
to
Association.
so the best way to keep up with me is primarily through our Facebook group. uh, which is again National Black Marathoners Association, the Facebook group. Usually posting something in there several times a week, and we do have an Instagram, which is Black Marathoners. So putting information out there, and we also do have a Facebook page. And one of the things, by the way, we did for Black History Month, every day we posted something about an African American distance runner. So if you go to the Facebook page or even to our website, we created a video. We'll show a 2-minute video where you can see day by day different individuals that we recognize for Black History Month. So it's a good way to pick up a little bit of history. And like I tell people, you never know, you may be on a game show or Jeopardy, and they're going to ask that one question. You can say, yes, I remember my Black running history. So yes, I do know that Ted Corbett was the first African American to run 100 marathons, and Marilyn Bevins was the first African American woman to win a marathon. You never know where this is going to come up in a trivia, in a trivia type of game.
You're right. It could be the difference between winning the $100,000 or going home.
With a
Yes,
set of steak knives.
yes.
But Tony, this has been an absolute pleasure, and again, just so accomplished with your individual performances and accomplishments, as well as the group and the organization. So yeah, we're excited to see, like Natalie said, everything that's going on. We will be keeping up and tuning in.
Yes. Thank you for
Okay.
everything, and thank you for this awesome chat.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me on, and maybe we could do this again sometime.
Sounds
Got it.
good, Tony.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see you soon.